I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Capella University is rethinking higher education. With its game-changing FlexPath learning format, you can earn your degree on your schedule and fit your education seamlessly into your life. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
You and I are talking. Like, you could have anybody in this chair, James. You know, you're easy to talk to. So you could have anybody in this chair, and the interaction would be completely different from, like, what it would be online, where someone takes on... It's almost like a video game where they take on an evil avatar and they spew their id, their repressed rage at someone from their childhood pain that they want to just take out on someone else. And everyone's like working out their own childhood issues in this illusory video game world, this like avatar world where people just taking out, spewing and yelling at each other without even having that human connection, which you're talking about.
Right. I mean, I think everybody agrees that's bad. Mm-hmm. And yet, what's the solution? Is there a societal solution, or is it just going to get worse? Brian Scott McFadden.
Hey, James.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I have been such a fan of your comedy for years now.
Thank you.
And you mentioned an idea to me the other day, and I thought it would be a great topic for a podcast, which is kind of, I think you mentioned political incorrectness in comedy, which is, of course, happens every day, and it's you know, and there's a line, just like there's a line in any kind of communication. There's a line, and I think it's a little further onto the politically incorrect side in comedy, but where is that line and where should it be?
Yeah,
and then it gives rise to the conversation of political incorrectness in society in general. Yeah. So I feel like even when we were kids, we were aware when the words politically incorrect probably first started when we were like in our 20s, maybe. Yeah. But it's just gotten into a disease almost, where like if you're politically incorrect, it's not just like, oh, okay, I need to maybe think about this a little bit more and then speak. Now, if you're politically incorrect, you're damned to hell.
Yeah. You're marginalized, and it's metastasized because. I mean, in the Trump era, it seems to have been used to describe almost anything. I'm not going to be politically incorrect, like about anything. Like comedians, that was the beauty of comedy, was that comedy was this entity in which there was this freedom to say things and to discuss things in a way with the recognition that comedians had a kind of cachet because of the environment, because of the context, because of the setting in which we speak, that we were allowed to say things because it didn't have this political importance. We were comics. We're the clowns and that saying the absurd things to the king or whatever. We're the jesters just going crazy. And we were just sort of I do have some theories on where that shifted, because it seems like now we're imbuing all of society with the same standards of behavior and comedians with the same levels of acceptability of speech that we hold politicians to. And I think that's insane.
Right, like just like
that's insane.
Take an extreme example where Kevin Hart. This is not even an extreme example, actually, but this is a prominent example. Yeah. Kevin Hart was originally denied being. They took away being the host of the Oscars because of tweets he made about gay people 20 years ago.
Yes.
And then they asked him to back because they couldn't find another host to replace him, and he refused.
He refused. I love that.
So the question is, like, so it's not only like it's not like he said something politically incorrect yesterday. It was like, I forget how many years ago. It was either 10 or 20 years ago. It was some long time ago. Not that it was. And here I feel like I have this. Not that it was good that he said that then.
No.
But, the standards we're holding to people are not even what they're saying today, but what they said 20 years ago.
Well, that's an even separate issue. Not only are we holding people... Okay, if you want to say that the cultural tides have shifted, fine, okay? We have these new standards. But if you're going to backwards engineer that stuff to stuff people said 20 years ago and get in a time machine and go back and say, you shouldn't have said that and you should have known that 2 decades later, that's to me such madness. I don't even comprehend. There's possibility for enlightenment and growth in people, and we've all undergone shifts in our consciousness and what we perceive to be things that we say that we go, oh, that was a little harsh or something. But you're not allowed that because I mean, the hard thing is like a good example. Now, people can look at that and go, oh, and I think it was a certain amount of time ago, but it wasn't like it's still, people go, well, he shouldn't have said that back then. Eddie Murphy's album, right, if you listen to that or watch that now, Delirious, as Joe Matarese comic does a whole bit about this, where I think the first cut on Eddie Murphy's album is faggots. It's called faggots. The word faggots is used, and it's literally on the CD if you buy it, and he uses that word all through that special. Now Eddie Murphy's still working in the business, I have people. If you talk to Eddie now, he'd go, I probably wouldn't use that word now. It's like, but I don't think Eddie Murphy, should he not get an Oscar for a future performance because he used those language? It's a weird thing to suddenly say, okay, we've shifted the language. I get it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but to totally take that and then go, well, you should have known in the future that things were going to change. You're like, how would people laughed and thought it was weird, or something, and thought it was funny. And it just seems odd to me. And I'm just fascinated by that dynamic. Like, how can you say to somebody, 20 years ago, you should have known not to use that language? It just doesn't make any sense.
And it's interesting, too, because there's so many different branches to go off here. So maybe I should almost list them. So one branch is, well, are we sort of saying comedians kind of have a hall pass to get away with more than other jobs in society and so on, like ranging from politicians to parents to teachers to whatever.
And I say an emphatic yes to that. Okay, and that is an argument that I understand a lot of people don't like. Right. I have the argument that yes, because your role in society, the context in which you're operating, matters. And if you're in a particular position, we now have elevated comedians or consider comedians to be thought leaders. Whether you think that's good or bad, that's an argument we can have. But I also think that the context in which comedians operate and the jobs that they have and the skill set that they bring means something. And a lot of times, and this is an argument I always have, a lot of comedians who say, oh, this crowd is too politically correct. You guys don't like... So many times I'll see comedians do just a terrible joke that isn't funny. And they'll use the shield of, well, you guys don't allow my edginess. You don't like... And it's like, no, your joke sucks, dude. Write better. If you're going to wade into any difficult topic, then the difficulty bar is raised. You better bring your A game, and you better write something that really brings the heat and really brings something smart and funny. If you're going to wade into racial waters, or you're going to wade into something that's edgy about gender or sexuality, then the game has changed. It's like Steph Curry. There's like we're now a different era of comics where you can't just do stupid old racial jokes like Puerto Rican steel or whatever that was in the 70s. You know what I mean? Like it's not there. We're not there. That doesn't mean you can't make jokes about race or anything else. It just means that the game has been elevated. And so don't use that. I hate that. See, as much as I hate political correctness, I even hate more people who use the idea that, oh, you guys just don't like my edginess. You're too politically correct. No, that joke blows, dude. Like, write something funny or insightful, you know?
Right. So if you're the comedian in that case, how do you know? You have to have a lot of self-awareness to say, okay, here's a situation where I just simply needed to write better, and I didn't have the hall pass,
right?
To test the line. So whereas someone like Jon Stewart, who could be argued either ruined the game or changed the game, he kind of blurred the lines between comedian and news reporter. So if you called him a news show, he would say, no, absolutely not. I'm a comedy show.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, by kind of holding up the banner of political correctness in most cases and pointing it out in among politicians and in the hypocrisy of society, he sort of made himself more than a comedian.
Well, see, that's the thing. But that's what that show was. And it's still a show, regardless. It was still it was on Comedy Central. Stewart himself did not want that mantle. He was doing a comedy show. It was placed on him to be a thought leader. Liberals who were so upset about losing to Bush, when Bush beat Gore. This is what I'm glad we brought that up, because this is like a passionate subject for me, because I always thought that's where it switched. I feel like that era changed what people's perception of comedy was. And that's I think, this is my own personal viewpoint, but like I noticed this shift. Jon Stewart was doing this great, and he was brilliant at it, and it was funny, and it was insightful, and it was great. But then they started wanting Jon Stewart. You remember this rally that they had where they wanted Jon Stewart to run for, and they wanted it to turn into this political. I'm going, why are you turning to this guy's doing his job. He's mocking Bush, and he's really bringing some really insightful commentary to and at that moment, there seemed to be this kind of impotent feeling in people who were angry at politics, angry at their inability to affect politics, but we'll affect culture. We can get comedians became this important voice,
right? Because
in the wilderness.
I think comedians, and let's say Jon Stewart, thought of himself maybe as the court jester in this massive court of America, and the court jester is well known for not only being funny, but for being
smart.
The only one, who was smart enough to see the truth and tell the truth.
Yes.
And then
Emperor has no clothes. Yes.
And I think, and I'm just playing the devil's advocate, because obviously Jon Stewart's a great comedian and it was a great show, but maybe he even blurred those lines either intentionally or unintentionally. Like I remember one time he made fun of Jim Cramer, who was a economic commentator on CNBC, and
I remember that.
And
he had him on the show too, and then
and Jim said, well, Jon Stewart's quote unquote just a comic, as we're saying here. Yeah. But then Jon Stewart had him on the show, and Jim thought it would just be a friendly show. Oh, sorry about that, blah blah blah.
Right.
And Jon Stewart ripped him apart. Jim wasn't ready for that, and it really affected the temperature of how people viewed the economy and Jim in particular. I mean, I'm friends with him. I know he was personally upset about it, and or trying not to be upset about it. But at what point was Jon Stewart kind of the leader of the voice of the people who couldn't speak,
I
or
think
just a comic?
My perception of that, and I remember when he took on Tucker Carlson and the other, what's his name? What was his?
Paul Magala? Who's that?
That was Clinton's former guy.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And he ripped them both to shreds. Yeah. And I thought that, well, look, my view of that is that Jon Stewart was a comic first, and I think he'd be the first one to say that. Did he rip Jim Cramer apart? Like, he did it with some humor. There was some humor in that interview, as I recall. There was some mocking of him and showing the way Jim Cramer's that like animated Jim Cramer style that he was. So I think he's a comic first. It doesn't mean you can't do or make social commentary. I mean, good comics can. George Carlin did it. Richard Pryor did it with race and stuff like that. So I don't think it's Jon Stewart's fault per se. Now, I'm defensive of comedians, and I loved what John did anyway, just from a comedic standpoint. But what I felt was, okay, he's still a comic. The sad part is that no one's talking about some of the issues that he was talking about. Like, no one took on he killed Crossfire single-handedly. He went on Crossfire and humiliated those guys and took on Tucker Carlson and said, what you're doing is hurting people because you're turning every argument into black and white, one side or the other, without compromise. Or you never see anyone Crossfire going, oh, it's a good point. You're turning me around on this. That never happened.
Right.
Not one
they're
time.
Almost, on news shows like that, they're actually not really allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I know.
Like the producer basically says, okay, we got someone who takes this viewpoint. Can you take that viewpoint?
Right.
And usually, because I know that scene.
Yeah.
Usually the pundit will say, I'll take whatever viewpoint you need me to take to get on the show.
But see, but that's an interesting dynamic because what it is it encourages and fosters an environment of conflict, not compromise, not of understanding, but only battle, gladiatorial combat.
They'll even whisper in your ear, because everybody's wearing something in their ear. They'll even whisper in your ear, like, okay, James, jump in now and start arguing.
Yeah. Right. I mean, but see what that does, because when you're working in that visual environment of television where Thunderdome, it's a kind of like, in the first thing you do when you write a play or you write a screenplay or something, the first thing they tell you is what's important is the conflict. You need conflict in drama. It's the basis of storytelling is like an overcoming of something or a fight or a conflict. It's Joseph Campbell. There's a conflict. There's something inciting incident or conflict. And that's what has to be resolved in any play or thing. So that's what makes television news and those things, it's not a really healthy environment to really foster a sense of community in America. Because to get ratings, you have to have conflict. That's what people want to watch.
Well, it didn't always used to be that way. Like, you can argue, I don't know, Walter Cronkite in the 60s, early 70s, because there was only 3 networks.
Yes.
They had a kind of monopoly on attention.
But they also weren't, I don't think that at that time they were profit-driven. They were a public service. They were like a public utility to report the news. They weren't owned by corporations selling then the advertising that is now needed. That's why they fire.
Although I think they were like NBC, ABC, and CBS.
That's an interesting question. Like was Walter Cronkite competing against Dan Rather, and did they change his hairstyle like they do with like, you know what I mean? Like Christine Kraft was a female anchor person who was fired because they didn't like her look, because people didn't like how she looked on television, and she sued.
I think because the world has become ghettoized in terms of opinion, and it wasn't that way necessarily in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Now things like that have become much more important. So you just like me, broadcast TV numbers in general have gone straight down every single year. So they have to do something like, have this certain look or have the opinion.
Yes.
Like if someone hosted a show on Fox News with opinion the exact opposite of all their viewership, they'd have to be fired because they're not making any money for the
right. But what that does is it offers the perception that you're getting news when really it's not at all.
So it's almost like not only are the comedians entertainers, but really all news now is entertainers.
Well, you've read Neil Postman, Amusing Ourselves to Death. Yeah. Well, he nailed that.
By the way, from the 90s, it's a book, and he kind of predicted all this.
He nailed all of this back in 84, right?
Yeah. So the book's Amusing Yourselves to Death, or Amusing Yourselves to Death, and it's all about how this very topic.
He says in that book that why is there a theme song on a news program? And you don't think about things like that, but when you go dun 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 dun, and he says and then why is there a cast of characters? And the sports guy is always a regular dude who you can relate to. And it's like, because it's not it's not news, it's an entertainment show.
Yeah.
And they're packaging it as such. So you get the camaraderie between the anchor woman and the anchor guy who are doing, it's like a mom and dad, and then you got the sports guy, and then the weather guy's kind of goofy or something like that. So and it has a news program with a theme song. I never really thought of it until he said that, but I thought that's a brilliant insight. When you have anything with a theme song is not a news program, like because dun, 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 it's trying to get your attention.
60 minutes with the tick 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 tick, beginning. Almost to make you afraid of what's about to come next.
Right.
But so the question is, like, obviously the seeds were being planted 20, 30, 40 years ago. Has it just become worse and worse, or do you think like the election of Trump has put us over the edge? Because I feel like even let's take the 2012 election, right? Which is the one obviously before the 2016 Trump election. It was Obama versus Romney, and I felt like, yes, Democrats, of course, like Barack, Republicans like Romney, but it wasn't like this violent clash of people. Like if it was a debate of ideas. Right. If hypothetically Romney had won, we probably wouldn't be seeing all the same equivalent anger.
Maybe, yeah.
But now with this election, somehow or other, it divided the country in half. Maybe it was already in half, but it seemed now to really go over the edge. So suddenly then everybody, and this might have good intentions, but every marginalized voice suddenly felt empowered because they got scared. If we don't speak now, we're never going to speak, because Trump, basically one side thought Trump was Hitler. The other side thought Trump was their savior. Of course, both sides are wrong. There's, it's still the same debate of issues as always. Regardless of what side you strongly believe, but somehow it became demonized, either side.
That's a good. The question is, when did this start? Was it brewing underneath the surface all this time, and no one really noticed it, or whatever? I mean, because I think it's fascinating. People go, well, America is this racist country. I go, but the country's the same as the country that elected Barack Obama twice. I mean, no one wants to hear that when I say that, but I go, we elected Barack Obama twice. Are you saying that we're a completely different country from the people voted? Because I remember people saying we'll never elect a black president. America's not ready for that. We're just not ready for that. And then we did it twice, and that's significant. I know that there's racism in America. I always say one of the things, the reason we have a lot of racism in America, people go, well, America's a racist country. Well, we also have a lot of races in America. Like, it's a joke of mine, is like, we have lots of races. So that's one of the requirements of being a racist country, is one of the good things about America. We have a lot of races. So that's where racism comes from. You need races to be racist. Like, there's literally, no one talks about, there's so much racism in China, like there's nobody to be racist against, like because it's a very homogenous thing. One of the beautiful things about America is that we're so racist, because we have so many races in America trying to get along, struggling with that same American experiment. So there's something about that's actually a beautiful thing that nobody really talks about. But yes, there are systemic and endemic problems with this country in that arena. But I also think that we tend to, because we watch the news and get into this balkanized idea of everyone's fighting, everyone hates each other, and the internet has just totally exploded that. And I think that bubbling under the surface, where everyone is allowed to live in these silos of thought and also just fight, because I'm just amazed when I see on Facebook, it's just people, they don't even believe what they're saying. It's it's just being able to be a video game avatar.
Or they don't even know. Like, nobody, I find with most issues are subtle and complex. Like when they really affect all of society. Like they're usually, if something was black and white, it would be kind of solved pretty easily.
Right.
So like, take for instance what caused the financial crisis.
Yeah.
There's many reasons, and maybe the most important reasons are very unobvious to the average person.
Right.
We just don't know.
This is an area that you know more about.
Right. So I might know more, but I still might not know all the answers, just like nobody does. Yeah. But now suddenly issues have become, people think they're not so nuanced, and of course this one is correct, and this one is correct.
Yeah, that's
and this
amazing
one's
to me.
And the news, I think, encourages that, because and the kind of extremes of each side encourages that. It's sort of like because 1% or half of 1% of society now has peanut allergies, there's no peanut served
Right,
in
anywhere.
100% of
I know, it's
school
amazing.
cafeterias.
Like and you'll see this dynamic played out in the media all the time, where the some sayism, I call it. Some say this, and you'll see a headline where it says it's like. What's the superhero movie? Captain Marvel came out, but some people don't like to see a female superhero. And then that's the headline. You go, some are angry about it, and I'm like, who's that? I don't know
Yeah, who are
anyone
the
that
some?
gives. Who has this much free time that they care about Captain Marvel, that they're angry about it? Like, so then you go online, you read the story, and it's a guy with 23 Twitter followers, right? That the media is creating this story of like, and you'll see Nazis are rallying there, and then you turn it on, there's 8 guys at the rally, and there's this weird dynamic to conflate because you click on it. You go, oh, someone's angry. I want to see who's angry. And it's like, no one is. There's 12 guys. Because someone can print something on Twitter and say, I don't like Captain Marvel. Who cares what this guy thinks? That's the difference, is that now everyone has a bullhorn, like, to be able to express their opinion. Before, you would have to write into the New York Times editorial section or like write a letter to get your ideas in print. Now, this intoxicating, alluring power to have your thoughts be broadcast in the same dynamic as the New York Times, in the same venue. The internet is like this billboard where my thoughts have the same weight on a movie as Roger Ebert or some elite thinker, or my thoughts can be like Steve Bannon's, just like out there in the thought world of like, I have the same thoughts as this guy, this David Brooks writes for the Times, but my stuff is up on Twitter. Like, it's like, so it's fascinating to me that everyone thinks their opinion matters, or even the media goes, well, some say this. It's like, some don't say that at all. Like 8 guys say that. Like,
Yeah, you mentioned people commenting about movies like Roger Ebert. Like, people would come, like, after Black Panther, for some reason, the movie Black Panther, which was a huge hit.
Yeah, huge hit.
Decent superhero movie. It was
Yeah,
kind
really
of had
good
the
movie.
same plot of every other superhero movie.
Yeah, sure.
But people would come up to me, and I wouldn't even say anything, and people were like, "Oh, this proves like a mostly a black cast can be a hit."
Right.
And I'd be like, "Oh, what about Coming to America?"
I know.
And,
Like, did
from
everybody
20 years
blanking
ago.
out?
Yeah.
Like,
or every single Tyler Perry movie.
I know.
So-
Isn't that amazing? Like, when did you guys miss a meeting or
and,
something?
and
like,
then they would get, but the whole thing is they were previously, even before I even say anything, angry.
yeah.
So it's like suddenly, like, I don't know, anything that enforces people's belief that they're right about something, instead of making them feel good, it just makes them feel angrier.
Yes. Yeah. It's for whatever reason, it just sends people off. Am I yelling? Like,
He adjusts everything.
He adjusts everything. No, that's true. And with the internet and people, like, what was the new one? Oh, on Game of Thrones.
Oh, I haven't watched Game of Thrones at all.
Okay. Well, there was just a thing saying people angry. I read this and I go, oh, here's another some say story. So there's some say that the plot twists of the Game of Thrones aren't happy about it because it's unrealistic. And I once again, you do a deep dive into the data of like who the some say is. And it's a guy in Portland and a guy in Iowa and like 2 other people. And then it becomes some don't like it. And then they use these quotes from a guy who has 8 Twitter followers. There's no one thought that.
It's like the Onion. It's like the Onion has come true. So the Onion is known for their funny articles, satirical articles that always start with like, area man.
Yes.
Didn't think Black Panther was so great.
Yeah. One guy thinks it, and now that becomes an actual story because it gets clicks. And in the media universe, advertising dollars. This is what that's what one of great points of Neil Postman said is like, because these are, and Noam Chomsky said this too, like that because it's profit driven, it's immediately corrupted. Like, you can't really it's corrupted by nature because you're not really reporting the news out of the context of having to get that to survive. You need eyeballs. So by that alone, it forces you to make compromises and hire people and to present the viewpoint. And if your ratings drop, you could be doing the best news, the most investigative reporting, like the McNeil Lehrer report or something, where they didn't have a theme song and it was very quiet. But it wasn't the highest rated. It was on PBS.
Yeah, it was on PBS, which is not profit driven.
Exactly.
But again, I think news has always been, except for PBS, news has always been profit driven. But now, again, it's maybe it's the kind of empowerment of social media. I mean, it used to be called social networks.
Yeah.
That because we would make friends with each other and message each other and communicate.
Yeah,
but then now it's become everybody's kind of reached their limit of who they're going to become friends with. So now it's just these, like you say, these bullhorns.
I never understood. Me and my friend Mike was an entrepreneur. My friend Mike is an entrepreneur. He's a big fan of yours, and he was like an internet guy in the early days. I came home from, he was my roommate, and I came home in the 90s or something, and I was going, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm registering domain names," right? And I go, "What? I didn't even know what like back then, like he was raising curtains.com and all these names, and
probably did well.
He made really a lot of money. Then he ended up selling it for like tons of money. He was ahead of the curve and that stuff. But we used to argue because he would say, "Oh, the internet's going to solve the problems because it's going to do this and it's going to." I go, and I was so not that guy, like in terms of like ever believing in technology, like being able to solve human problems. If we blow up the world, it's not because the world needs human solutions to human problems. You can't solve it with a microchip or a better web network. People still, now you see, Sri Lanka, there are civil wars thanks to Facebook or whatever, like with Facebook, Myanmar or whatever it is. I can't remember, but there's some does anybody know the story? There's a civil war
with the Rohingyas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so technology is going to give us this. Technology gave us the H-bomb too. You know what I mean? Like if we destroy ourselves, technology is going to have a big hand in that. Technology doesn't solve problems of the human heart. You have to have empathy and feelings and evolution and consciousness. You can't just have, a better modem will solve our ability to connect with our friends. What that does is it actually distances you from your friend in a lot of ways, and you don't call them as much because you can just send them a birthday. You don't send them a card. You don't even go visit them. And it's like, you don't realize it's always, like Neil Postman said, there's always a trade-off of technology. It giveth and it taketh away something, but we only emphasize what it gives us and not what it takes away.
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. When I first got on Facebook, I was so excited because you're right. Maybe I wouldn't call my friends as much, but all of a sudden, my friends from kindergarten who I never would have spoke to again. Oh, I could see, little Davey has kids and soccer matches.
But see, isn't that the intoxicating, illusory, ephemeral, mystical allure of Facebook? It gives you this other thing that makes it appear that it is a tool for connection, but it also disconnects you from the motivation to really reach out for human connection that might have been there if that wasn't there. Like I think Freud wrote about this in where he said that what's the point of having a phone if like I might not go visit people now, like that I might have visited in order to speak to them. If we have now we have a phone and we don't have to,
I mean, my experience with this is that like sometimes I've done things or I'm part of things that some people have gotten very angry at me, whether rationally or irrationally. And then when they're on Twitter or Facebook, they could say the most outrageous, even threatening things. Like, if I see that guy, I'm going to kill him or whatever. Yes. And so but in this case, if I just pick up the phone, so if I kind of
completely different,
if I say, hey, why did we know each other? Why did you say that? Yeah. And can I, you made a death threat towards me, and we've been friends for 20 years.
Yeah.
Then they calm down, and then they even like tweet later or Facebook later, like, oh, I spoke to James. It's very reasonable, actually. But like, yes, it's sort of like each level of technology kind of distances further
another thing.
Yeah, and the consequences of what you say.
And you don't have. Look, you and I are talking. Like, you could have anybody in this chair, James. You're you're easy to talk to, and you love talking to people, and you love interviewing people. So you could have anybody in this chair, and the interaction would be completely different from like what it would be online, where someone takes on. It's almost like a video game where they take on an evil avatar, and they just they spew their id, their repressed rage at someone from their childhood pain that they want to just take out on someone else. And everyone's like working out their own childhood issues in this illusory video game world, this like avatar world where people just taking out, spewing, and yelling at each other without even having that human connection, which you're talking about.
Right. So we agree. I mean, I think everybody agrees that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And yet what's the solution? I feel there's a personal solution, which is, okay, I'm just going to withdraw a little from, like, for instance, I never go on my Facebook news feed. I don't go on the Twitter feed. Sometimes I'll post stuff because I like to write articles and I'll post it on Facebook, but I don't actually ever go on the feed. And and I never listen to TV news just because if you read books, you're going to know more than if you spend the same amount of time listening to news. So that's a personal solution. But what do you think? Is there a societal solution, or is it just going to get worse?
It's just I think the only thing you can ask for, nobody's a Luddite. Nobody's telling people like, oh, get rid of your you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's the answer. It's not going. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Even Neil Postman said that. People are not going to throw their TVs out even back then. But what you can be aware of, and I think that the best you can hope for. The best you can hope for is like to just be cognizant that this tool is not neutral. It doesn't. This was once again, it's Postman's great thing. I love this because he said technology is not neutral. People say, "Oh, it's just a tool. You can use it for good or evil," and he goes, "No." And that was his big point he tried to make. And I'm not even sure even if I totally agree with him or what your thoughts are. But he said, no, technology is not neutral. It's not neutral. It's not 50-50. Technology has biases that encourage a certain kind of behavior and a certain kind of human use and discourage others. Yes, you can use a machine gun to punch holes in your wall. Okay. But that's not its usage.
So let's look at a Postman technology that seems neutral. Like you pick, and I'll try to see what the bad side is.
Yeah.
Like so machine guns, you can see an obvious disadvantage, and maybe people could argue an advantage in a war or whatever.
Yeah.
But what's something that's seems totally one could argue is
like
innocuous.
a tool. Well, if you look at like what is Twitter, right? Like I mean, Twitter is not necessary for our society. It doesn't really. We could all live without Twitter, but it's this thing, and it becomes what is Twitter usually used for? Yes, it can amplify news events. Okay. But it also can be used for conspiracy theories, spreading crap, attacking people, like all this thing. Where does the human psyche take a tool, and what is its default drive to use it for? I don't know the answer to this. I'm simply saying.
But that's a good question. So let's say when Twitter first started, I think
or Facebook.
But Twitter's a good example. I think the impetus was Jack Dorsey, who was a programmer working for the company that eventually became Twitter. The original company for Twitter was started in the mid-00s by this guy, Ev Williams. And the original company, and now I'm forgetting the name of it, but Audio, yeah. It was to create software that was a podcasting platform. And then this one programmer off to the side named Jack Dorsey, who was just an employee of the company, he wanted to make a way to send messages to his entire group of friends rather than just one friend at a time. So he created Twitter because it was he kept it to the size of an SMS message, like a phone text, and it was a way to broadcast instead of one at a time SMSing your friends on the phone. And then so that was the good. And I always feel like with good intentions, people forget that. Like you say, nothing's neutral. There's going to be bad things that could happen with good intentions.
Yeah, good things can come of Twitter can be used for something like that. But what does the human brain take technology, and what is its biased position to use it for? It can be used for good, like we say. Facebook can be used for good, but now you see like this weird outpouring of just vitriol, venom, and stuff like that. And does that mean that that's the default for Facebook technology? Not necessarily. That's not what I'm saying.
And here's the thing is, I don't even think most of that venom is real. Because I think what happens is
I don't think so either.
Somebody figures, it's sort of proven that, I think it's proven that, you get a like on a Facebook post or on a Twitter tweet, and you get a tiny, tiny dopamine hit that makes you happier for a microsecond.
Right.
And so you want to get thousands and thousands of likes so the microseconds last longer. And you realize, if I participate in this venom, I'm going to be happier.
Yes.
Because lots of people will like me.
Yes.
And so I don't even think most of the people believe in the venom. That's why you can just call them and remove the like factor and get past all that. But then what happens is let's take political parties as an example, is that you can no longer be nuanced and in the center, or maybe you can be slightly left of center or slightly. It used to be Democrats were slightly left of center and Republicans were slightly right of center. And then there would be, more, extreme Republicans, and then there would be the alt-right, and then there would be maybe fascists, and, liberals, maybe there would be people who it would go from slightly left to politically correct, maybe too politically correct, to socialist, to communism. So then there's extremes. But now if you're not on an extreme, like if you're even just slightly left of center, people will hate you unless and they'll push you more and more into the extreme. And then suddenly the group will shower you with likes. And so you feel like, oh, I better stay in my ghetto.
That's my community. Yes. Yeah. That's my community. But I think that's because of the internet whole conflict model. Like, why do you think in the news they go, a woman was eaten by a tiger. We have the video. And it's not newsworthy, right? Like nobody cares. Like you don't need to know that a woman was eaten at the San Diego, but we have video, so that leads on the news. Shocking video of a man being beaten. So you get this perception of the world. These things have always happened, but you get this perception of the world shaped by a model of like this Hunger Games kind of arena, which encourages only certain content that's exciting to watch because it's visual, and encourages conflict to be the funnel by which everything gets put through that. Otherwise, you don't get eyeballs. So if you watch the news, thank God you don't.
People tell me like, oh, did you hear about so and so? And I'll have no idea who they're talking about.
And I hate. And then people also say, "Well, you don't watch the news. You're disengaging." I go,
you're not informed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Really? I'm not informed. But let me tell you something. Like you posting one thing on Facebook is not political engagement.
Right.
Okay. This is what drives me crazy. Someone walking out of a comedy club or heckling at a comedy club because somebody says something politically. When Martin Luther King, wanted to change society, he didn't go to Yuck Yucks. You know what I mean? And protest jokes,
Is that a vet? Like,
That's
good.
Thank you. I'll write that down. But like, he wasn't protesting at comedy clubs, okay? That they were doing. He was trying to alter the power structure and influence economic issues and political issues. He wasn't going to this guy said this at this comedy club. That's what drives me crazy, is that has taken the place of political engagement. Because that's hard work. It's hard work to change the system and to influence it's much harder to get to Chuck Schumer than it is to heckle Amy Schumer. You know what I mean? Like that's that. And nobody, so people want to trash Amy Schumer because they can't. Because what's the use of bothering with Chuck Schumer? You can't get to him. He's insulated. But Amy Schumer's out there. She's at a club. She's online. We can trash her. We can say something. We can say bad things. So it's like this weird.
And then in a weird way they succeed because look, Amy Schumer, for better or for worse, whether you agree with her or not, she was political during the 2016 election. Yeah. And now she's back. She's doing, I'm pregnant and this is my humor, which everyone can relate to. Yeah. So rather than, trying to push whatever her particular edge was, she's just, I shouldn't say just, she's extremely, her last special I really loved and I thought was extremely funny. But they depoliticized her.
Right. Well, I mean, but then you go, well, that's, as an artist, sometimes you do take routes where you say things and then you get attacked for saying things like why should we listen to this, actor? But then, of course, the next breath, if somebody on the right, like Clint Eastwood, says something, or, Ted Nugent, they trumpet them. They'll embrace a celebrity just like anybody else if they adhere to that ideology. So with Amy Schumer, you're like, well, maybe she wanted to speak politics. But if we imbue celebrities with importance, like 1 minute they're important and then the next minute they're not. Right wingers will say, these people are just dumb. They don't know anything. There's no, and then they're angry about some left-wing celebrity. Then well, if they're so dumb, they don't know anything. So why are you paying attention to them? And why is it when some right-wing guy says something, then you have them on the show, like James Woods or somebody who's more right-wing? They're celebrating his tweets or retweeting them. He's like, well, I thought he was a dumb actor. I just like we're all dumb actors. Why is just because he agrees with you now you're retweeting him and thinking like he's courageous because he's right?
It's not like if some let's say there's another synagogue shooting or mosque shooting or whatever. It's not like we're all waiting like, oh my God, what does James Woods think? Has he commented yet?
Yes,
Like,
yes. I'm waiting for him to weigh in.
Call me when James Woods is on CNN.
Yes,
I've got to
yes.
hear what he has to say.
Yeah, yeah. So that what you were saying about the comedian, the Amy Schumer, or whatever. I really think that there's been this just like weird. We stopped believing in political activism. And its ability to, and you can say, well, that good, bad, maybe you can't change that. But we started, it seems like there's been this shift over, well, the culture, we'll change the culture. We won't be able to change politics or the system. So we'll get the culture to change and we'll influence comedian. And then when you do that, that's when bad things start happening in terms of like, for me, in terms of what comedy is, because then you're imbuing comedy with an importance and a relevance. I love comedy. I think it does have importance, relevance, but when you're shouldering and using that as a substitute for political engagement, like I'm going to go, we're going to make comedians adhere to a speech code, or we're going to stop them from saying that, as if that's really the levers of power in America, or really at the comedy clubs.
So what's an example where you made a joke that you felt was a good joke, and of course, for every joke, there's going to be some people who love it, some people are okay with it, some people hate it. Just the nature of even a good joke.
Well,
but then with the political, if you throw political correctness on top of it, what's a case where you there was not the normal skew of love, hate, but actually there was hate because of the political side.
Well, because like I have a joke about, I love talking about comedy in my act. Like I love talking about the dynamics of stand-up. And there was always this thing about comedy is the only art form where, nobody wants to sit up front. I just love the fact that we're the only art form that has an, kind of negative view of being close to the action. Like if you're anywhere else in a rock concert, front row theater, front row, I got front row seats, but comedy show front row, fuck you. I want something in the back near the kitchen. And I have this joke that I'm leading to this.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but so when the Comedy Store in LA, I was there a few weeks ago, and they force where you sit. Like they bring you in 6 at a time, and they start with the front row and move back.
Yes.
And you have to actually pay more at that moment to sit in the back.
I know, that's awesome. See, that's
so that's why I don't know if you've noticed, even here, we changed here immediately to have the not exactly that, because we don't have enough people to kind of, they have like 6 bodyguards standing around. But we changed the seating so it's not tables as much as like rows. So now people are like naturally inclined to sit towards, they can't sit too far away from the stage, whether they're in the first row or the second row.
Right. Well, no, I have this joke that I wrote because I wanted to talk about that dynamic. And so I said, everyone, everywhere in life you want to be up front except the comedy show. Comedy club is the only place even Rosa Parks didn't want to sit up front at, okay? All right, that was my joke that I wrote, like, because I thought that was really funny. Like,
okay, so let's break it down. So that's,
yes.
So what makes that funny is because you're conflating or deflating an enormously important historical, political, and political, racial, civil rights event to something as meaninglessness as make her sit in the front row of a comedy store. So that's kind of the humor of it. Is that the two events are not anywhere alike, and you're making it seem like they're exactly like. So there's a spread between reality and meaning.
And I love that. Taking comedy and imbuing it with this sense of transcendent importance and vital cultural significance when it doesn't have that at all is one of the things I like to think about comedy clubs as having this gravitas that it actually really doesn't have.
So on the surface, with us talking about it here, you could see that, sure, someone could be upset for the very reason we just said it was funny. Someone could be said, well, you're taking something really important. And why are you taking Rosa Parks?
I know.
And removing, she was really important for civil rights. Like that. And I doesn't care about a comedy club. But, then here we can just rationally say, well, that person who says that just obviously doesn't have a sense of humor. That's obviously not what you were doing. You really don't think Rosa Parks should sit in the front row everywhere she goes.
Well, that's the point, is that the joke itself, if you when you hear it, usually there's there's often a big laugh, but a kind of a gasp, like because they don't quite process the joke right away. It takes a moment to really get it. Like Rosa Parks didn't even want to sit up front. And then you'll feel it, you'll hear this thing. And the joke is about seating arrangements. Has nothing to do with race, really.
So I've seen you give this joke.
Yeah.
Have you, I don't recall, I think it was at that notorious one event we both went to where I was MC and you were a comedian and the crowd was just like falling asleep for everybody, for the whole.
Horrible. Yeah, yeah.
But
it was Jonestown. It was Jonestown at that gig.
Hey, people
horrible.
Died at Jonestown.
Hey, Jonestown. No. The people died on stage at that gig.
There was a congressman died.
There was more death at that gig than at Jonestown, let me tell you. And it was us, the comedians.
Right. We died at that gig.
It was much more tragic. Jonestown was a lark compared to that gig. Right?
So what's the worst reaction you've had to that?
Well, the funny part about that joke is that black people love that. They laugh all the time at that joke because they feel you can tell where the energy is coming from in a joke like that. And that's another thing that says when you take words out of context and you take words out of energy, and you and I talking and you sitting with someone on the phone, there's an energy, there's a love, there's an affection, there's a connection, there's something there, there's empathy, there's compassion, there's an actual human connection. When you see words on a page, that has none of that. So Facebook or Twitter, you just see these words, and so you don't hear the inflection. I mean, it amazes me that people take jokes out of context and print them, and then you see them and you go, ooh, that seems a little weird. And yeah, it might seem weird, but if you see the person, you go, oh, I get it. That's different because you feel what they're saying. And so when you bloodlessly drain all of that out and reduce it to words on a page, it oftentimes does not have the impact or shifts it completely. So when I do that joke, in comedy, almost universally, that joke usually gets a big laugh. But I'll do it at Cellar sometimes, and they'll be like, "Ugh!" And then I, of course, have to do a seminar with a white, board where I then instruct the crowd. Okay, folks, but then I do a tag. If I say, what do I say? If Rosa Parks had been in a comedy club instead of a bus, the civil rights movement would have never happened, right? Like Miss Parks, would you like a seat right near the stage? No, I'm good back here, right? So it's an act out. So there's this funny. The idea of that is just completely absurd, and it just elevates this idea that here's in a comedy club putting, the front row, and I took this one scenario and made it, into something that's just conflating something that's so important. But white people go, oh, is that okay to laugh at? I don't know. Am I a racist if I laugh? They're doing calculations like Rain Man in their head of trying to figure out if something is okay to laugh at because they're hearing they just hear Rosa Parks and they're just suddenly they're scrambled. Their brains are scrambled.
So
right?
let's I hate to use the words give them the benefit of the doubt for a second, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They're scared, right?
Yeah.
So they're scared of not somehow, obviously we've all been massively affected lately by the cognitive bias, which is this primal way humans think and a way humans have survived for tens of thousands of years. We're all persuaded now by groupthink.
Yeah.
So they're afraid if they laugh, then they'll be kicked out of the group, which has been, for evolutionary reasons, a very bad thing.
Yes.
They'll be eaten by wolves then.
Yeah.
And so cortisol spikes in their brain if they're worried about getting kicked out of the tribe.
Right.
And so I wonder now, because of this ghettoizing of opinion and that moving to the extremes, and obviously your joke is, first off, it's politically meaningless, really. It's just a funny joke. And it's but even if it was somehow in the center, questioning, some places you should sit up front, some places you should be allowed to sit up front.
Yeah, right.
But they're afraid. There's nothing they can do about it. They're afraid.
Yeah. No, and so then I say to the crowd, by the way, that is a seating arrangement joke. That is a logistics joke. That's a joke about logistics. There is no real, true racial component to it. But then I'll act out the white guy going, "Oh, should we laugh at that? Is that that's insensitive because she's a cultural icon and very important in the thing." So as funny as I find that joke, I think I'm just not going to weigh in on it because I don't want to be excised from my group and kicked out. So I'm just not going to stop it, people. Just calm down, okay? Because of all the jokes you'll see that are racial, that's one of the most genial, least, egregious. It doesn't make any real comment on anything, but that's how powerful that dynamic is that we're talking about, where people are taken aback and going, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't laugh at that," but I'm not sure even why.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not sure why because it's a cognitive bias.
Yeah.
So it's Daniel Kahneman's book Thinking Fast and Slow, which identifies all these cognitive biases. They can't help it. They can't help that they're afraid to laugh.
Yes.
And it's maybe a recent thing where the groupthink has gotten so big on each side that it captures everybody now.
Right.
But so let's say that joke affects one half of the people,
Right.
and then you kind of have a part two, which is like, oh boy, I didn't realize a joke about where the seats are would be so politically.
Yeah, I know. This is great. I know it's great, but that's my point.
But then you'll get to laugh because then you relieve the tension.
Yes,
they wanted to
call
laugh
it out.
before, but now they're allowed to laugh.
Yes.
So it's almost like now you have, for any kind of sensitive joke, you have to have a part two to get the people who didn't laugh the first time.
Yeah, and that's an important part of comedy that a lot of comics, like a lot of young comics or whatever, don't pro comics know that right away.
Here's what I wonder with comedy as an art form, which is that, and this goes for any art form really, and for any kind of writing.
Yeah.
So writing is mass produced now. People have an opinion and they say it, and they don't think to check, oh, is this opinion unique? Has this been written in a better way before? They just think everybody wants to listen to my opinion.
Yeah.
And with comedy, there's and I see comedians all day and night, down here, downstairs, or at other clubs or whatever. And there's the kind of comedians where they're just sort of telling their premise, punchline, and it's really easy. Nobody could disagree. Like, oh, the weird thing about subways is, we get to learn every stench of urine possible. And everyone sort of agrees with that and laughs at it. You're not really putting a question to the audience. So I sort of feel, and I wonder if you agree, I sort of feel the best comedy is when you put a question to the audience and they respond, not necessarily whether it's funny or not funny, but they respond whether you're hitting a third rail or not.
Give me an example of something like in your act, let's say, that that addresses that, or do you have something?
Like I'll have a joke about Auschwitz. So
of course,
I always have to say I'm Jewish, but
we're going for it now, James. James, do you have an example? Yes, my Auschwitz bit, my Auschwitz chunk.
But by the way, just
because I have a Buchenwald chunk that I'm going to be working on right now, and I want to.
Okay. I'm gonna even.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
I'm gonna even take a worse one. I'm gonna even take a worse topic. Okay. So this one, I've done it a few times. Maybe half the times it laughs, half the times it doesn't. But I'll have an abortion joke.
Sure.
So abortion is very third rail.
Yeah,
you really can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And but it's an interesting thing to note.
Yes, you think? Yeah.
A man let's say, your girlfriend's giving birth versus your girlfriend having an abortion.
Right.
For a man, the experience if you're going to it, if you're in the room, the experience is very similar. You're useless in both cases.
Okay.
So there's doctors running around, there's nurses running around. And every time you want to help, they're just like, get to the side. You're supposed to be there, but you're actually so totally useless.
Completely useless. Damn.
And so my kind of point there is that there's nuance in I'm very pro-choice.
Yeah.
But there's nuance in some of these issues, and it's okay to talk about it.
How does that bit do? What's your percentage on that piece?
A lot of it depends on performance, as most stand-up comedy jokes. So if I just say it, it's probably it sounds weird, but if you perform it like in a very clueless manner, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And I'm just like, it just depends how you're what you do on stage and so on. And if you act like really self-entitled, I say, I used to be the mayor of this entire situation here.
Right,
I created this.
Right.
And now I'm the lowest serf in this situation.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on how I'm acting it out.
Sure.
But the less extra I put into it, the worse it does.
Yeah.
So
you have to throw in lots of qualifiers, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying this is like politically edgy, but the edge is really that, hey, I'm pro-choice. I'm allowed to be pro-choice.
Right.
But I'm allowed to think about, choice in a slightly different way
Sure.
than women think about it. Because
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there
yeah.
are nuances to the issue.
Right,
For
right, right.
instance, in both and I've seen this happen in other contexts. Like on reason, the evolution of this joke is I wrote an article where I was pro-choice, very firmly pro-choice,
Mm-hmm.
but there are nuances that often extreme views on this don't agree. For instance, some women go through pain during an abortion, or some women experience like a post-traumatic stress after an abortion. And here I am, as probably as liberal as you could be on this topic.
Right.
And I had, on Facebook on the article, I had very angry, also very pro-choice people, yelling
Angry
at me.
at you. Yeah.
And I'm like, don't worry, we're on the same team on this.
Right.
And they're like,
but no deviation
I
from
had
orthodoxy.
3 abortions and it didn't hurt at all. And people were like very upset. And that's, that could happen on the stand-up thing as well.
Yeah. So no, I just wanted to know, because as someone who watches, I know that when you wade into those areas like that, and especially something like that, you can feel the chill in the room. Like you're going to get some people, and other people want to know where you're going with that, and are anticipating if you're going to take that on, like that. If you break that joke down, once again, if you put a schematic of that joke on a wall and like break it down, that's really about male utility,
Right.
right.
And the fact that men think they always need to be the most important person in the room.
Exactly.
And here suddenly they're by far the least powerful person in the room.
Completely useless and so that,
and it's equal for both situations.
Right. So that's one of those jokes where, once again, the discomfort, either adds to the power of the bit itself, but also, you're going to lose some people because they don't know how to process, or because that's not a race. That's an interesting thing, because just abortion, you hear that word and immediately it just conjures up, are you allowed to joke about that?
Right. So women are, right. Women could joke about it all day long. Like we brought up Amy Schumer. She has a joke from 2007 where she was turning 30 and she suddenly realized that all her friends were adulting. They're getting more adults. And they call her and say, "Oh, Amy, I'm pregnant." And she'll react like, What? Do you need someone to drive you to the clinic? And they're like, No, I'm married and I'm having a baby.
No, that's funny.
So women are allowed to joke about it, but if like you reacted when I even said the word like Auschwitz or abortion, like men can't say certain things.
Yeah, well, there's a reticence, in which I think is really unfortunate, because I think everybody should be able to joke about everything. But and I don't think, and I always don't like that whole idea of like, oh, you're like the idea that you can't joke about this because you're either a man, or you can only joke about this because you're a woman, or you can only joke about this because you're white,
or even have an opinion.
Yeah, because I don't really get that at all, because you're still a human being, and that's what comedy is supposed to be for, is to be stripping away to the basic underpinnings of our shared humanity. That's what it's supposed to be about. So I never understand why these surface differences ever should imbue or in any way, shape, or form balkanize anyone's ability to talk about anything. It depends on the joke. Once again, I have a real... I think everybody should be able to talk about anything, but like I said, I really hate when comics use that idea as a shield to get away with shitty writing or shitty jokes or bad,
So like, but I think though, to your point, like I do have to question, like, is there a better way I could write this or say this or perform this? Like I was watching, Andrew Schultz.
Yeah, sure.
He has an interesting way, I think, of sometimes flipping the issue. So at first it seems like he's totally misogynistic, sexist.
Yeah,
and then
Andrew's really good at this.
Yeah, and so there's one joke he has where I could see he's getting half the audience, but then he has a clever way winning the other half.
Yeah,
which is that, and I'll just say it. I'm not doing his thing,
sure.
But he basically starts off saying he finds sex with women having their period gross.
Right.
And the funny part is the way he says it. Like he pauses and say it's gross. Blood's coming out of you.
Sure.
But then so you're kind of like, you could see how some of the audience can be like, oh, where's
he going with this?
Some people are laughing, and he performs it very well.
Yeah.
But then he has this really clever way. He said, listen, if blood was coming out of my dick.
Right.
I'm not going to work either.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
funny. Yeah.
It's funny, like
Yeah.
how he puts himself in
Yeah,
the
that's a
position.
great see that right there. You see, that's the beauty and magic of comedy because it forces you to see something in a different way that women wouldn't think about that and suddenly go, "Well, I want to have sex with a guy what's running on a mistake." Like when I go, "Oh yeah, break me off a piece of that," give me some of that. They might go, "Ew," and then women will go, "Oh, that's a really good point right there." Like they never really thought of it that way. And there's nothing, and that Andrew's really good at that because he has these like really sneaky kind of clever ways of
Right.
like.
So I'm wondering if, and again, I see, let's say, of course, there's many types of comedy, but I'll divide it into two. There's the kind where, okay, there's premise, punchline,
Yeah.
it's funny, here's the thing about subways,
Yeah.
But it doesn't put what I call put the question to the audience. It doesn't make the
Right.
audience, it doesn't challenge the audience.
Yeah.
And then there's the side where like the Rosa Parks joke or Andrew's joke. I'm not even going to include my joke in the
Right.
category. And where you kind of put the question to the audience a little bit, and you put them on edge, and then you have to kind of figure out the puzzle.
Well, yeah, I have a bit where I talk about a guy. It was a true story. A guy was on the train, and he gets on the train, and he goes, he's a beggar on the subway, and I just go, I had a skeptical panhandler, and the guy gets on the train, he's like, oh, nobody got $1? I mean, nobody got one freaking dollar, man. Like, and I do this character because that's exactly what happened. I laughed so hard when the guy got on the train because usually guys are like, hey, can somebody help me out? This guy was like, oh, come on, people, nobody got $1. So I do the bit. It gets this like huge. I thought that's an interesting approach to question the honesty of your target audience. I wanted to give that guy $1 just for originality. Okay, so just a little bit. It's a little bit of an act out. But then someone came up to me, another comedian, goes, "Why'd you make him a black guy?" Right? Okay,
funny.
which was really like the true story. A comedian goes, "Why'd you make them a black guy?" Right? And I said, and then I tell the story on stage, which is absolutely true, like word for word, like where I go, well, I didn't say he was a black guy, right? Which is true. I don't say the guy's race. I didn't go, a black guy got on a train. I go, a guy got on a train. He's a skeptical pen. He goes, nobody got $1. Nobody got $1. He goes, why'd you make him a black guy? I go, I didn't make him a black guy. He goes, and the guy goes, well, he sounded like a black guy. And I go, well, you think all black people sound alike? Is that what you're basically saying? That's kind of racist. And he goes, well, was he a black guy? I go, yeah, he was a black guy. Right? I'm not supposed to be penalized because I'm a good voice actor.
Right.
I'm supposed to recast my own stories and memories just to be politically correct. I'm supposed to give the guy an Irish accent or something. I don't like just because I'm a good voice actor, I'm actually doing a dead-on impersonation of the guy, and I'm supposed to do a worse one to cater to a kind of idiot. That makes no sense to me.
So
right?
that's where though the part two I think comes in to get the stragglers, the guys like that who are going to come to you.
Yeah.
So Louis C.K. has this one joke where I forget what accent he was using, but I think he was out of voice of a black guy from the ghetto,
Right.
but he didn't identify it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then he says, I bet you're all wondering why I sound Chinese.
Right.
And,
Right.
So that's like his
okay,
part
similar.
too.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, similar. So I thought, how weird would it be to have the guy be like, hello, everyone. I want to know if anybody got $1 or I can help my family because I just want
That is
to
funny,
know.
though.
Like I start acting out the guy, going through a tough time, like it would make no sense. On a New York subway,
Right.
a Scotsman gets on and starts doing it, but that wouldn't get people upset or be racist. And it's like, that's silly. And you shouldn't be. And I just thought it was funny that I can't actually do an accurate rendition of the voice of the guy who actually got on the train because that's like, stereotypical, but not to me. I just happen to be good at voices. Like a regular guy couldn't do that. I can't help it.
Right.
It's not like, well, I'm talented, like I'm supposed to get heat because I'm good at that, so that's just another example of like something that sounds like kind of like, oh, that's wrong. But then when you really think about it, you go, oh, that's actually not wrong at all. Like when you reframe it, like Andrew did with that joke, you go, oh yeah, I get it. But you have to like really explain that so that people get uncomfortable because they think, oh, he's doing a stereotype of this guy. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm doing the
Why
actual
were you just
guy.
a gay guy?
But yeah, exactly. I mean, why didn't you do a gay like?
No, just right now you had a gay.
See, why did you just suddenly do a gay person? And why are you assuming that gay people? How maybe this is a woman's voice, James? I don't understand why you would be so stereotypically. Why do you have to put people in silos? It's just wrong.
That's a very good
It's
voice.
Yeah, thank you. It's just so sad the way he does the James. It's just I don't know. He has issues. Anyways. Moving on. Just get this show over with. I can't take it anymore. I mean, really, seriously. Is he like this all the time, everyone? Seriously? Seriously? I feel a hostility. There's a shift. Does anyone get the shift here? Because I came on the show in good, you know what I mean, with a positive attitude, and all of a sudden there's a negative bias that I'm experiencing. And no, you go ahead. You just do what's good for you.
I don't know, Brian. I don't know. I think you hit that third rail.
Yeah, right there.
We eliminate you from the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do wonder though if actually like the art. Let's not say the art form. I wonder if comedy should always.
It is
try
an
to
art
ask
form.
the question.
It is an art
Yeah.
form.
So I wonder if I think in a lot
It
of
is the most respected and least respected art form.
At the same time.
At the same time. It is the one art form that comedy actors don't win Oscars. That's an amazing thing to me. Like comedic actors almost never universally get. You look at Eddie Murphy said the greatest thing when he was in. He got nominated for Dreamgirls, and there's a moment in Dreamgirls where he's like suicidal or something, and he's gonna overdose on drugs in the thing, and he does this look of sadness. And the camera like sees him, and he captures this thing, and people talk about that with Eddie Murphy. And they were interviewing Eddie Murphy about that, and he goes, you're nominated for an Oscar. How does that feel? And he's great. He's like, people talk about the look, man. They're like, oh, that look, you just this amazing look, it's so riveting. And you did that. Did you see me in Nutty Professor when I played 19 different characters? Which of those things do you think was more difficult? And you go, oh, right. Like, Nutty Professor is masterful genius. Like, he plays 20 different guys, and he got nominated for an Oscar for Dreamgirls, right? But not for Nutty Professor, when he plays this heartbreaking character and the brother and the uncle and he's doing it. And which of those shows more acting chops or skill or an acting toolbox or skill set? Because I'll tell you, Jack Nicholson couldn't have done that. You know what I mean? Like Eddie there's no one that could have done what Eddie did. But that doesn't get respected. He wasn't nominated for that. You can hear Sherman Klump getting nominated for an Oscar for that. So I'm saying that comedy in and of itself as an art form is revered by people. At the same time, it's felt to be less than put up on a pedestal as like this level of importance. And I think it's because everyone thinks they're funny. That's another thing. There's not a single person on the planet that thinks I don't have a good sense of humor. Like everyone, and even people that some people will say that they're not able to be funny, but everyone thinks they have a good sense of humor. No one ever says, well, I don't really have a good sense of humor. That's not my area, but everyone thinks they do. And a lot of people don't. It's just that's the way it is. So there's this universality to this particular thing. Not everyone thinks they can play lead guitar. Not everyone thinks they can sing. Not everyone thinks they can paint. Not everyone thinks they can sculpt. Not everyone thinks they can dance. They can really be a skilled dancer. But when it comes to being funny, everyone thinks they have knowledge and they can come up. That's why people critique you and come up to you and have a joke for you after the show, which doesn't happen. I have a song for you. Like
a lot of people, and this was more prevalent 3 or 4 years ago, but a lot of people would come up to me and say, "Oh, you should do this."
Yeah,
they almost have like requests.
Yeah,
weird. And they have never, because the other thing about let me ask your opinion on this, and this is not really related to the political correctness aspect, but so the other day I was interviewing 2 people on the same day. One was, and I'm super fans of both of them, Mike Reese, who wrote many episodes of The Simpsons, is a producer on 659 episodes of The Simpsons.
Right.
He wrote actually many of the jokes for Oscars 2019, the one Oscars without a host, and he's a joke writer, and he actually even was a joke writer for Johnny Carson in the 80s.
Okay.
And so I asked him, did you get better? Did you improve? And he's like, no, I always was like a good joke writer. Like, I was
Right.
always really funny, and
Right.
I just think in jokes.
Right.
And then I also interviewed that day Susie Essman, who
Sure.
she was
I know
a stand-up
Susie.
comedian
For years,
for
yeah. I worked
16 years.
Sure.
And then she was on Curb Your Enthusiasm as a very funny actress. And she said it took her 10 years before she finally felt she was coming into her own on the
voice,
stage.
yeah.
And so obviously they're both funny and they both have senses of humor, but there's a difference between stand-up comedy and just being funny.
Yeah.
So stand-up comedy, like the being funny part is important, but it's one part of many. Like there's also the stage work. There's the like you're doing the voices or the act outs. There's crowd work and sensing how, and she even talks about how each crowd's got a different personality. So you have to kind of go through your catalog of thousands of crowds that you've experienced and figure out how to react. So it's as a performance art, it's much more difficult than just having a sense of humor.
Yeah, and there's an antagonistic relationship between audience and comedian that's different from other art forms. You'll see literally guys will bring a girl to the show and not want to laugh at a comedian and be defiant, like not actually into the show. They'll be on their phones or you don't do that in many other art forms, but in comedy, there's a sort of, you have to win them over. There's a sort of, even celebrity comics will say that they go on, they'll get a 5-minute window. That's okay because you're a celebrity, but then you still have to bring your A game. You still have to be funny. You still have, the audience is not going to just laugh at anything. Laughter still has to be earned. Right. So you'll see people go on and they'll be, audiences don't always, what you were saying about talking about being funny. I lost my train of thought completely.
Being funny versus the performance.
Oh yeah. And people like going up and it's there's so many layers. You'll see people that don't have great jokes, but they're great performers, and other people that are both. Brian Regan is like great at everything, like really performing comedy and being like naturally just funny and goofy but the bits are so well written, like they're just so artfully written, and it doesn't get the respect, like comedy doesn't get the respect that it deserves. Some comics are funny right out of the gate. Chappelle was hilarious when he was like 15 or 16, like amazing, like right away. Some comics have that kind of just golden, hue around them where they're just, wow, that joke was amazing. I didn't see that coming, and that you're relatively. And some people it takes longer to get.
But like Chappelle though is an interesting example where he does not get. Let's say he's the best in the world.
Yeah,
he does not get the same number of laughs per minute as some other comedians who we both probably know, who get so many laughs per minute. It's like insane.
Right.
And he maybe gets averages on his specials, maybe a laugh every 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And we've seen people do, laughs every 4 seconds.
Yeah.
But Dave Chappelle's the best. So so it's not the humor. It's also that when
the laughs that come when Dave finally delivers, the laughs are like when that hit, that bit really lands. When he may set it up in that subtle jazz performer way that he does, where he's like doing the thing, but when it hits, it's just gold. Like it's usually just bang. That's so funny. And he uses silence better than most comics. Like silence is a fear. A lot of comedians have fear of silence because they don't want to let the thing linger, but he'll let that thing just stretch and the payoff, the tension builds, and then he'll hit something really so freaking funny. That's just great. And I just remember like when he was young, they had that joke. I can't remember. It was like a long time ago. He had that joke about like if Batman, Batman came into a black neighborhood or something. Do you know this joke? I just remember it. I don't know why. It always stuck with me because he goes, Batman, you never see Batman in a black neighborhood or something. It was just such a funny, because there was this long period of silence where he go, Robin, and he's like, and then there was like long pause, and he go, hey, didn't we park the Batmobile right here? And it was just like this long pause. What the, and it was just this really, and it was just like this beautiful pause, and he looks around, he acted it out, and then he hit the punchline, and it was just hilarious because you didn't see it coming, and you didn't, and he's one of the masters of that, so good at that, like just really, when the laugh finally comes, it's not just, he doesn't have boom, boom, boom laughter like some comics do, but he'll have, when the laugh comes, it's just enormous, a sense of relief and insight and oh God, you got me. You know?
Yeah, and then so I think that's right. I think also, and I didn't appreciate this a few years ago, but I appreciate it more now watching him over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of does an act out on every single word.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, he does.
if you try to mimic him,
Mhm.
like
It's
right
hard.
after, you could tell he's doing something every single word.
Yeah.
He's in character somehow.
Yeah, it's great.
So
He's amazing.
because like I was on his last special, he suddenly spent 10 minutes out of character, and his voice got deeper,
Right.
and he's like sitting there telling the audience what he thinks, and he's got an opinion. Let me tell you, guy.
Right.
And then he goes back into character. He goes an octave lower and or higher, and boom, he's back in doing his performance.
It's great. It's great. He's one of the best, greatest of all time.
So like you came from like an acting family. Your dad was the voice
actor, yeah.
Frankenberry,
Yeah.
right? Cereal.
Yeah, my dad
I used to see those commercials as a kid.
I know. He was. My dad was on the Thundercats. He played Snarf on the Thundercats. So he was a voice actor. So I grew up around my father walking around the house doing voices all the time. So that was the way I got into comedy. Was like listening to him. He would do Paul Lynde and Jack Benny and stuff like that. And so I knew how to do voices at an early age.
Did he teach you how to do voices, or
I
did
didn't. You hear your dad going, "Gee, I didn't even know," doing Jack Benny, or he would do Paul Lynde, and he had these repertoire of voices that were just killer. And he could do it. So I just thought that was normal. So you just mimic your dad, So I would do Paul Lynde and, how are you kids? What's going on? Because he used to do voices all the time. Brian, you want some cereal? And so I would just started doing voices. And so then I found the kids at school, thought that was funny. And I always wanted to be a stand-up. I just loved the art form. I just was like, Richard Pryor was my hero from an early age. And I used to just watch him do, because he gets no credit either for his acting outs that he used to do.
Right.
But oh my God, if you listen to Richard, this is like the greatest, because they're real people. He just started acting out real people. From, if you hear the Dice Game routine, I forget what album now, it's blanking out, but where he does the white cop coming in. Now listen, kids, you folks, we just want to help you people. And like he was the first guy, Eddie Murphy talks about, he was the first guy who did the stock white guy talking, which was the high voiced. Richard was the first guy who came out with the original white voice. Now listen up here, guys. We're just Guy Gumption. We're trying to help you people. And the black, fuck you, motherfucker, honky, motherfucker. Right? So Richard was like my biggest hero. Can I get some water? So I started doing voices, and my father taught me because he was a stand-up.
Oh, he was a stand-up too.
Yeah, but he just did voices and characters. And he told me, just end with a big bit at the end. Like, always have a killer closer. And that was like my thing. Like, I always had like one killer closer that I would write, and then I would move on from that to have like a killer closer, and then I would do that for like a year or 2 years, and then write a new killer closer, and I would do like all my voices at the end. That's how I started getting work, because I did all these voices. Back then, every comic was doing, Jim from Taxi, okay, and Pee Wee Herman, like stuff that I look back on now. I go, okay, that was kind of goofy. But I realized if I was going to stay an impressionist, I wouldn't become a good comic, because you can get away with just doing voices and just being an impressionist. There's nothing wrong with that, but eventually you reach that point. Any impressionist, if you watch them, they always have to come up with new weird scenarios why they're doing, Christopher Walken or something. like a good one, a good comic, a good impression. It's just we're going off on a tangent here, but I always thought it was funny that if you watch an impressionist, they have to give a justification for why they're suddenly doing a Christopher Walken impersonation or an Al Pacino.
Right. I feel like it has to be like a weird thing. Like, I'm going to do an impression of Christopher Walken taking the SATs.
Yeah.
Or some like thing. Two
Can you
things that don't
imagine
match.
Christopher Walken? The number of 4 is B or C. And so but I just didn't like having to come up with weird scenarios why I was doing Nicholson, or I think back then I was doing Dudley Moore, or Cray. Oh, fantastic! All right, yeah. And I would have to come up with a new scenario. Oh, I was in the thing. Hey, every drunk sounds like. Oh, that's what I did. I did because Arthur. I don't know what year that was, but Arthur was out, and I was doing one of my bits was, it's hard to pretend you're come home to your parents' house, you're drunk. You try to pretend you're not drunk in front of your parents. It's hard to pretend you're sober when you sound like Arthur. That was my. Oh, great, Mom's out. You're awake. I thought I was doing great with you. great, fantastic, all right, yeah. Why are you hitting me? And I think that was like one of my bits that I used to do, which was good because it was sort of personal as well as, but that was always a struggle for me to come up with a new weird scenario for a voice. And you'll see a comic go, you know who was in the elevator with? That was Nicholson was on the, hey, how you doing there? You know, like it's like, no, he wasn't in the elevator with you. You know, so that's why I stopped doing like all impressions, and I just try to sprinkle them in when they work or when something's, you know, good now. Or something that occurs to me. But anyway, that's a separate issue. But that's how I got into stand-up, and I started doing voices. And I started getting work because I could do voices. And those could get you laughs really quickly. You know, you could get laughs. And I always said, if I can combine a voice with a good bit and some good one-line jokes, then they may not laugh at the bit, but they'll laugh at the voice. Or the people who won't laugh at the voice will laugh at the bit, or the people that won't laugh at the bit or the voice will laugh at the one-liners.
Right, so you're giving them as many opportunities as possible to laugh or one joke.
I said I'll have a multi-tiered, bulletproof kind of bit. So you see me do like long bits where I'm one guy doing the subway guy or something like that, because it's a bit that allows me to like get away with doing like a funny voice in a weird scenario with some really funny lines. And so I said, okay, they'll have to laugh at that. Eventually, like one level of those will hook somebody in the audience. For the dumb people, they'll laugh at the goofy voice. For the smart people, they get the jokes. And for both of them, they'll be the bit itself, which is insightful or funny.
So let me ask you this. So again, it seems like with like, let's say, I'll call it club comedy, like 15 minutes or less, you have to, the audience typically doesn't know the comic.
Yeah.
As opposed to like when they're going to, you know, see Jerry Seinfeld at the Beacon Theater and they're buying $100 tickets, they know what they're going to.
Yeah.
When they go to a comedy club, there's 7 comics on a lineup. Yeah. They don't know you.
Yeah.
If they don't like you, they'll shut down and wait for the next comic and so on. It's this annoying thing.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to make your comedy in a weird way super safe to make sure you survive the 15 minutes and then they're laughing. So like you said, you made bulletproof bits in this way. But so I'm curious if now in today's day and age, and I think the most interesting comedy is when you do put the question to the audience where it's not safe and you're kind of extending yourself to be, it's a little dangerous. Like you're doing a joke, you know, like that Andrew Schultz one, or like your Rosa Parks when you're doing a joke where some people might say, "What is he doing?" and you're putting the question to them: "Should I be offended by this or not?"
Yeah, like I'm doing a joke now, which is like kind of edgy, and it's like where I say, you know, it's not a good time to be a guy right now. You know, where guys are not the most popular demographic group. Like I said, I check in with the guys and I go, how are the guys doing? How are the men in the audience? You good? Because everyone always goes, look at the beautiful women here tonight. Nobody ever, you know, like, it's like, I always ask the guys, I go, how are the men doing? How are the guys doing in the audience? I just want to check in with you guys because, you know, we're not getting a lot of good press lately, guys. I understand. I feel for you. You know, we're not the most popular demographic group, you know. I'll tell you, Bruce Jenner, he got out just in time, okay? That was the most perfectly timed exit. I thought at first when that happened, I thought, that's kind of weird. A couple of years later, I'm like, well played. You know, like that guy, he read the tea leaves and he went,
good long game.
Yeah. Wow. He just went, oh, they're dismantling the patriarchy. You know, sorry, guys, I got to go. Like, he's just switching perfectly timed. How do you live off the patriarchy for all those years and then just when it starts to go down, you just switch teams like a genius? Well played. What a jujitsu move. Now, that bit, that gets us, once again, it gets like this gasp of like, or is that, you know, and I always am like it's a joke, it's this thing, it's not, and there's the people go, you know, oh, it's transphobic, which is another thing. It's transphobic, and I'm always like, is it real? Like something phobic means that you're afraid of something or you're terrified of something. It's like, well, I'm just doing a joke about reality and our perceptions of reality. I have nothing. I'm just trying to illuminate something that I noticed, and
it's tricky also because when you first start the joke, if a guy is there with his girlfriend, say, or if he's on a date, is he going to laugh at it?
Yeah.
For fear of offending his date.
Well, I know, and that joke usually gets a universally good response because it so comes out of nowhere, and it's kind of got a twisty kind of
The premise is funny, but then the punchline with the Bruce Jenner, that's got to hit.
Yeah, that nails. That really
the
does
very
well.
first line. I'm betting sometimes not everyone is laughing. Like they're chuckling. I bet.
Yeah.
Because it's a weird question.
Yeah. How the guys, it's not. That's the setup.
But
right?
the guys are probably a little nervous. What are the women in the room thinking?
Yeah, but that's what comedy is, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's a celebration of differences, and it should be an illumination of topics that it's okay to talk about, that it's okay to broach them in that arena, in stand-up above all. This is a place for that. That's what drives me crazy about this, coming back, circling full circle on the political correctness thing. It's like, it's weird that comedy, of all places, should have any of these weird rules placed on it, when, of all places, that's the place where you go, like you can say something genial. Like there was I was a camp counselor when I was a teenager. Like I worked in a camp, and there was a kid in a wheelchair, and I remember everyone was so afraid to talk, like say anything about the guy. And I said, "Hey, can you get up? We're moving here. Can you please? Can you stop with this act? You all know." And he loved that, because I was treating him like a person. I was making fun of the elephant in the room, and he loved me.
Right, and obviously you weren't bullying him,
No.
and obviously you wouldn't say that,
of course,
if you didn't like him for his disability.
And I hated the fact that everyone was like, "Timmy, does Timmy want to go?" Like, Timmy, can you get up out of the chair? We're not buying this anymore. All right, like nobody. And he thought that was the funniest thing. And that's the irony that sometimes when you make fun of, like, you're supposedly a group or something, they're laughing, but the other people, because of their own issues, are not laughing, because they're the ones having the discomfort. They're the ones that have the... And if you're a comic and you call that out, it's magical to the people who feel, like no one wants to say anything to me. And then, he thought that was the funniest thing ever. And so that was, to me, the beauty of comedy.
So again,
the beauty of that.
Right. So again, it's like on the side of not just doing kind of the safe, like, what's weird about tomatoes, and you're kind of doing this other side, which is, okay, let's figure out where there's a potential third rail and play both sides of it in this tricky way.
It's on everyone's mind. I mean, things that are on everyone's mind. I did another joke where I said that I can't, the whole the pronouns thing that you hear about in the press, and I said I got to learn pronouns. It's just I haven't even cracked the coffee sizes at Starbucks. Okay, and that's true. Mm-hmm. That's an actual true joke. I don't know what venti. I still don't know, what are they? Venti, tall. I still don't know which one is which. I just go in medium. Just give me the medium. I don't know what the what is the medium? I still don't know. And so I'm supposed to learn.
Grande, I think, is the
medium.
medium.
Okay, grande, right. I don't even know. What's the difference? Grande, tall? That makes no
tall,
sense to
small.
me. Yeah, exactly.
Grande's medium.
I don't know that. My brain on the brain, I've been on the planet too long to change the sizes of coffee drinks. You know what I mean? Like, it's grooved in. There's no more room in my head for this. Okay, I can't handle it. I have other things on my mind. So you're changing the pronouns. That's all well and good. Just give me a memo. And when we talk, and I don't know, but I'm just saying that if you think I'm going to do research into this, I can't. I'm saying this is bad. I'm bad. I'm saying that I just don't have I'm not transphobic. I'm trans lazy. Okay, I just don't have the ability to process new information and pick it up as quickly as other people. So I go to Starbucks and go, "Can I have a medium coffee, please?" And I go, I know there's.
Sometimes
I still
they freeze.
don't know the sizes. I honestly don't. People go, "Well, you're making up." No, what is it? Tall. Literally, yeah, right? Grande, right? Venti? I don't know what that is.
Grande,
right?
which means huge.
We got to go learn Latin to get a latte? What is this madness? I have no idea what's going on. So a lot of my comedy comes from just, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand it. I can't handle it. It's
so
just like,
what's your process when you're sitting at home and you're saying, okay, I'm going to sit down with a pad, blank piece of paper, and I'm going to write a joke.
Yeah.
Do you say to yourself, okay, what's bothering me? How do you start off with
Well, I have a microphone. I have a cordless microphone, and I babble it out, because I find that most of the time, and I'll record it, and most of the time I'll just ramble and say, something off the top of my head that's funnier. But for some strange reason, I need a microphone. I don't know why. I feel weird.
Well, maybe because part of it is the act out.
Yes, because I love act out. So I'll be like, I don't know. I've been working on this bit about you get introductions all the time from comics, and some of them are really bad, and some of them are good, and usually, and I love a good introduction. But I got one recently where the guy said, "This next performer is one of comedy's best kept secrets."
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, and I thought that was so funny. Like it's like because it's sort of a covert way to say there's a lot of big names in comedy. This next performer is not one of them. Okay, right? So yeah, I've been trying to get the second line of that joke, like trying to write the second. I want to write the whole bit, but I know that's the opener. This next one is not one of them, right? Like, and I wrote 20, 30 different versions of that joke, like where I was just exhausted from writing the covert way of saying this next performer. It's kind of passive aggressive way of saying, which is another way of saying, which you might as well just say. Like I wrote every version that of that second. That's not even the laugh line, and I was writing every.
But it's a funny premise.
It's a funny premise, so I wanted to get the wording exactly right. So I would just be like, which is a funny way of saying there's a lot of big names in comedy. The next performer is not one of them, or this. Why don't you just say? There's a lot of big names in comedy, you know what I mean? Like, just try and find what's conversationally works and clicks with me. And I finally am kind of just settled on this next, which is an interesting way to say, which is not the best table setter for excitement, to say this next performer is a lot of big names in comedy. This next performer is not one of them, And then I was like, okay, I got that down. That's step one. That's the opener. Then I got to get the second line, which is what do I say after that? So it's just like a lot, and it's exhausting because it's like, what do I say after that? And I finally cracked that the other night because I babbled it out and I just said, he's been keeping a low profile in this business. Okay, I was like, okay, that's number
he's
two.
the James Bond of comedy.
Yeah. He's been keeping a low profile and maintaining a shroud of anonymity. You know what I mean? Like, and I wanted to write
Comic 007.
Yes. He's been just like really, really keeping it under wraps, flying under the radar. I wrote every possible iteration of
like
what you could say about
comedy.
someone. Yeah, of maintaining someone's complete lack of name recognition. And maintaining a low level of notoriety. And so I've been just like writing that bit and working that out and trying to get it because I think it's great for TV. I'd love to do that one on TV because I think it's really funny because they're going to introduce you on TV. So I could just go, that was a great intro. And you don't always get that, like it's a perfect, for me, it's just like a perfect
You're
intro.
fascinated by intros because
I love that stuff.
The very first time I saw you, it was probably a couple of years ago, they give you a great intro.
Right.
You've seen him on this, you've seen him on this,
Yeah.
it's great, it's funny.
Yeah.
And then you said, boy, I wish in every profession you would get an intro like that, and then you named an accounting firm like Cohen and Steinhardt, and here we have new accountant.
Yes.
You might have seen him in cost analysis.
I did a bit about why don't they introduce you and I've never been able to make this bit completely. I've never been completely happy with it because most comics are happy with it's sort of a 7 or 6.5, I call it right now.
It's so funny because I find it to be really funny, but go ahead.
Yeah, but it's just it needs some tweaking still because getting into it is so laborious. The wording is just like they should have. You should be introduced. Accountants don't get that. You don't get if you show up to work. There's no MC who introduces you if you're an accountant. And I think it would be much better for accountants to get an intro because I think accounting is boring, and so they would be much cooler if you showed up at work and there was an MC with a microphone going, "This, are y'all ready for some cost-benefit analysis?" This next, because I'm going to bring up a man right now who's one of the most fiscally responsible people in the financial industry today. He's one of our favorites here at Shulman, and Weiss. So give it up for the asset allocating, debt consolidating, master and commander market capitalization, and the mystical maestro mortgage amortization, Kenny Birnbaum, And so I thought, that's really funny. And I did one night, I'm at Stand Up in New York, and I had that bit, and there was a guy from the financial sector who had chains on, and he had his buddies there, and people were mocking him all night, going, "You ain't no accountant. Like, you don't look like an accountant." And he was a black guy, and he was just sitting there, like, really, he was like decked out, like, with chain. He didn't look like an accountant. So that bit, I whipped that bit out. I nearly got an ovation from everybody because it looked like I came up with it right off the top of my head. And some of it I ad-libbed because I weaved him into it. But that bit was like perfect for that guy. And that's the thing. I love intros and stuff about, I've written like tons of bits about what an intro is like, or I'll say something about, I can't live up to that, you know? You say something about negative about me so that I can rally.
But it's interesting how earlier you said you like to joke about comedy, and so that's, for instance, is a joke about comedy, about the comedy form, and kind of applying it to real life. And then I really like when I've seen you in front of a crowd that was totally dead. It's like you're able to whip out. Maybe I don't even know what you're thinking in your head. Maybe you're saying, okay, I'm not going to do my usual set. I have prepared a set for exactly this kind of audience.
Right.
And you get them to laugh because, you have the whole thing where, I almost didn't make it. I was at a cancer hospital. Yeah, there was a child there. Are you Brian Scott McFadden? Can you just sit by me for a while? And you're like, no, Timmy, because there's a lot of people at
this
stand-up
comedy
New York
club
who need me too.
Right.
So when you say, when you guys laugh, a kid's life is saved.
You'll save a kid's life. Yes. Well, I love the idea of comedy as manipulation and guilt-inducing. If you don't, that's like a coping mechanism for me. If you're not going to laugh at my jokes, then I'm going to tell you a story that will make you shame you into laughing. Like, that was another strategy that I always thought was funny. If you reframe their desire not to laugh as something that harms them,
right?
You know what I mean? Like you can, and calling that out to me is fun. Like, just like we're saying if you don't laugh, there's a child will die, right? Like to me, that's so funny. Like, because and crowds, especially when they're curmudgeonly, crowds are they're like scared animals sometimes, and you have to be able to read them and go, what does this crowd need? And sometimes you'll guess wrong, and I've done it. At one time at stand-up, I went up and I just guessed everything wrong. Like, I thought they were all from New York and they were all out-of-towners. I just did all the wrong bits and just dug myself a deep hole. Luckily, I'm able to usually rally in those situations and get a good laugh at the end. But I mistimed, misjudged, and talked to the exact wrong person who was going to then open the door to them heckling and drunk. And they were like, so you just try to navigate that, what you were saying earlier about, like, what do you say? How do you deal with those kind of crowds where, I'm going to blame myself if I don't do well? And I always do. I always blame. What could I have done better? But sometimes you're just not. What you'll realize is that you'll guess wrong sometimes, and you learn from it and hope you can add more things to your repertoire. There's things you're going to be facing, like following a big name. You're going to be facing that. So,
what I do, which you can't really do because you do multiple shows a night at different clubs usually, right? Like, you'll just stand up in New York and you'll go across town or whatever. So I try to get to the club before it starts. So I watch people walking in. Sometimes I'll even talk to them walking in, so they're primed when they see me. They think I know them now, and I'm looking at them. They think they're sort of more primed to want to laugh. And then I'll watch. It's very important for me to watch the MC do his initial set because he's figuring out who everybody is. Yeah. And then you see a lot of comedians ask the same questions as the MC, and because they don't know the MC asked them, and the crowd gets bored of that. But I'm all ready to go.
You're all ready to go. Yeah. So I get torn on that. Sometimes for me, I like to know everything about the crowd. And other times I like to go and just fly in off the street. I have no idea what's been talked about. And I actually wrote a bit about that where I go up with a pad and I just ask the audience what's been talked about. I go, has politics been talked about? And I'll just go, I want to cross that off the list. And, has anyone talked about the bullfighting? Has anyone talked about that? Has anyone, relationships, sex, fetal alcohol syndrome? Has anyone talked about that? Because I got a 20-minute chunk on that. And is that good to go? We're good on that? All right, I'll get into that. That's awesome. And I'll just how about bullfighting when you have fetal alcohol syndrome? Has anyone connected those two dots? Because there's some magic in that, and I'm going to get to that later. I'll make fun of what we all do as comics, which is we wonder, did somebody talk about this earlier? Because sometimes you'll do a joke, it'll get nothing. That usually kills, and you'll go, uh-oh, somebody strip mined this already. Right. And maybe they're doing my joke, or somebody already did that, or you'll get something like that. Usually,
when you have to go on a late night show. I don't know what late night shows you've done. What's an example late night show?
Like, you mean
Like
Conan?
Letterman?
Or I did, With the Letterman and Craig Ferguson.
How do you change your approach when it's like 5 minutes to so a super tight 5 minutes where you can't even really move that much?
Yeah.
And it's to a national audience.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Hicks said that, doing network TV is like they put you in a dress and tell you to be yourself. And that's perfect representation of what it's like. When you do like a late night set, usually they'll vet it really carefully. Like Eddie Brill went over my Letterman set really, really carefully, and then because there was a big show and you didn't get any wiggle room. Like,
and is that like you probably really can't like tell a story. I probably have to do very tight premise, punchline.
Well, especially when it's your first time out. That was my network television debut, so that was really scripted. And even they cut one joke right before I went on stage. And if you watch the set, I still watch it going, you see me right there? That's me going, I'm about to do the joke they told me not to do right there. And I pivoted because you rehearse a set so much. You run it. And then at the last minute, they said, somebody had a problem with this thing, so don't do that one joke. But you're so drilled into it. It's like the coffee sizes of Starbucks. I can't remember new information. But I pulled it off because it only was a moment of like, I was about to do the joke that they said I couldn't do, and then I stopped.
Do you feel those late night sets are less art form and more about just industry acceptance?
Yeah, it's a little artificial because the crowd is already pumped. It's hard to not have a good set on television. I've seen them, but it's harder to bomb on television because the crowd is already hyped up and the laugh is halfway in their throat already. Like if you eat it on TV, you're really, you got a problem.
New career
right? Yeah, exactly. Because the crowd is really hyped and they really want to like you. You've got the stamp of approval of the host. Letterman likes you, or Fallon likes you, or Conan likes you. So you're already halfway there. And chances are, if you've got the talent booker has gone over the set with you, and it's a strong set. Like I have like 3 pieces now I want to put together for a set TV spot, which I know, all right, that's going to get a huge applause break on TV, I think, or that bit is good for TV. And I just want to, do a little more tweaking on some of those. But yeah, if you're doing, it is a bit artificial compared to a club set.
Although some comedians, I think, they could like take. I'm thinking of Gary Goldman's set on Conan where he did the abbreviated states joke.
Brilliant.
That was like a perfect story structure, but with like tons of punchlines in the middle.
Amazing, yeah.
And it fit exactly 6 minutes.
Exactly, yeah.
So it worked somehow perfectly.
Right, and if you see like Garrett, that bit is just gold and just like perfectly worded with so many circuitous little avenues of comedy that go off the rails and come back, and then. And Dottie, Dottie, like that. She's like, and it's great. And then you'll see somebody like Sam Kinison, who's on Letterman. If you watch Sam Kinison said, he's literally talking about how he's editing in his head, like on Letterman, like he says it on network TV, like he's like watching what he's saying on when he's doing the set. Because Sam had gotten so big at that point that even the networks were like, we're going to put him on. We hope it goes well. And I'm sure they vetted his set to a certain degree. But Sam was such a loose cannon that it almost seemed like he might blurt out something at any moment that got him in trouble. So I think that's his first set on Letterman. Maybe it's the second one. I don't remember. But he's literally doing a set and he just goes, network TV, like where he cuts something right in the middle of it and says, I can't say that word. Okay, let's move it on. And he's commenting on it. It's just like hilarious to watch somebody literally editing their own set because it's network television and it's not his natural environment, So that's funny. If you want to watch like stuff like that, that's interesting to see the dichotomy between live performance, especially someone who doesn't ordinarily fit into that. And Hicks was great because as funny as he was, you don't think of him as like a great Letterman comic because he had a lot of dirty stuff, edgy stuff. But then you watch his sets and they're hilariously funny. He's like underrated as a true comedian. If you watch he had these great jokes, like where like he had one of the best jokes about male-female relationships and he said, and it's perfect. It's like a perfect joke. He goes, I think I figured out men and women. It was started in the Garden of Eden. It's my favorite joke about relationships. It's like, starting in the Garden of Eden, God says Eve comes up to Adam, and Adam says to Eve, Adam says to Eve, look, we're immortal. We have everything we ever need for all eternity. We'll never grow old. We have everything we need. We'll never grow old. We'll never die. And all wishes come true the moment we have them. And Eve said, yeah, it's just not enough, is it? Right? Right. And to me, that's like a perfect representation, not just of male-female relationships, but about just the human condition of dissatisfaction in general, of never being able to be happy with almost everything that you have. And that's a great joke that Hicks did on TV. And it always bothered me that great jokes like that fall down the memory hole. And that's like a Zen koan. That's like a genius little piece of, that's a poem, you know? That's like a little poem and people don't give jokes the respect. You know, certain Stephen Wright jokes have fallen into the, zeitgeist of like people remember, and maybe, what's his name?
Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah, Mitch Hedberg has a couple that people have really stick with people because they've been reproduced in memes. But there's a lot of great jokes that just get forgotten and not remembered that were really funny and reach the level of art, and I've always wondered why comedy doesn't get that kind of cachet,
I wonder if you could sort of take a joke like that, though, and let's say, okay, you're not going to repeat his joke for obvious reasons, but it's just like there's only so many stories, and then they're retold over and over again.
Yeah.
There's like the cowboy version of Star Wars, the detective version of Star Wars.
But there's always another way in. There's always another way to say the same thing,
Yeah, like that joke, it makes me think of, Americans always feel like our conditions can be improved.
Yeah.
Try telling, and then you make some comparison to the kid in Ethiopia who ends up in jail in America, and he's writing home to his mom like all these great things that are happening to him now.
Right, yeah.
Like he gets a meal 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And
everything
he gets
from
plumbing.
perspective. Yes.
Yeah.
That's true, and that's what.
He could express free love with his
and
roommate
there's
all
never,
the time.
There's always a new way to say something. Like Brian Regan does this bit about the scoring in tennis, and it's just perfect. Like I watched it and I go, well, you can't do another bit about scoring in tennis. At least I can't. Watching Brian's joke, he takes everything 30 love and says how ridiculous the verbiage is in that, and he just nails it. Just every possible angle, he just hits it. And just hits it completely out of the park. It's so funny. It's so perfectly worded. And I just go, well, I can't write another joke. You can't. No one's going to be able to write a bit about us, but someone will.
Do you ever feel that about Louis C.K.? Because he kind of hits every single topic ever.
Well, yeah, but Louis always has his own weird take on it. That you go. Okay, that's bizarre world. I didn't really think of that angle on that. And so that's the challenge. Someone strip mine that already. You gotta man up. You gotta comedy up and find something that no one's talked about. When I did the What Women Want bit, what I did on Letterman, I sat there for hours with a thesaurus coming up with words, and I just wrote endless combinations until I finally cracked it on stage, and then. And it just takes work. It's hard. The easiest jokes sometimes come to you either right away or after laborious hours of like trying to find the right word or the right insight into something.
Yeah, like Gary Goldman with that abbreviated stage show.
I know, it's ridiculous.
He said it took him 20 years to write.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you can tell because everything in that joke has circumlocutions and off ramps of weirdness, and that's what makes it so good. Is it's just not this one thing. It's just goes all over the map and comes back, and it's something that everyone's noticed and seen, but no one's articulated that well. And so it's just a masterpiece. If anyone wants to see a great bit, yeah, Gary Goldman. Abbreviations of the states.
Well, Gary once came on the podcast, and we spent 90 minutes just breaking down that one joke.
Oh yeah,
I printed up the joke.
Yeah.
And
he was on and you did that?
Yeah.
It's
And
ridiculous.
then we just went over word by word. And
you could do that.
I don't think he enjoyed doing it so much, actually, because he was like,
you loved it, but
yeah. But it was fun.
You get micro and macro with these things. So I can tell he'd be like, I already did this, but I can tell, like,
he was trapped in the studio.
Yes,
we got him.
Talking about it one bit. Yeah.
So I don't know if we solved political correctness in comedy or in the
know
world.
If we did. But did we? Did we crack the code, guys? Have we ended it? Have we fixed the problem? I think we did. This one podcast, everybody needs to lighten up. It's a comedy club. And yes, all I could say is comedians, stop solving. Go to your congressman and pass legislation. Don't go to yuck yucks and protest comedians. Show up at your congressman, go door to door, pass out leaflets, and stop heckling comics. Okay, that's
Okay. Here's what I think I got out of it, which is that I do think it is interesting to hit that politically correct edge and figure out almost like a puzzle how to find the funny out of it.
Absolutely.
Without being too, because yes, they're going to be offended. And you don't, if they're too offended, you're not going to be asked back to the comedy club.
Yeah.
So you have to, correctly or incorrectly, you have to play around the edge a little bit.
Yes.
But I think that's more interesting for the art form than just having a quirky punchline and premise.
I
also think calling out what it sort of underlines what I've already thought about. It's calling out what the audience is thinking. So if they don't like the joke about Rosa Parks, you kind of make it ridiculous. You sort of put the onus on them to feel ridiculous, which is like, yes, I know a joke about seating arrangements is very controversial,
yes,
or something like that.
Right. That seating logistics humor is very, very politically incorrect. To call out seating arrangements. Really? Is that what we're? It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me.
And there's a third thing I got out of it.
And you can't remember.
I can't remember now. We're just getting older. I just can't remember.
Yeah, you're losing it.
Yeah.
You're losing it. It's just like the coffee sizes at Starbucks. I can't remember them. I can't remember. I have no
only
room in my head for more information.
It'll hit me what the third thing was, because I had three things when I started that.
Absolutely. Right. It'll hit you after the podcast, as always.
Yes.
The funniest joke will hit me on the subway after I spent 8 hours writing.
Does that happen to you? So
all the time.
I'll do a set and okay. So this is in the. You were talking about, or we were sort of talking about a little bit. Sometimes you have to follow comics where it's very hard.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, I had to follow Aaron Berg, who's very hard to follow.
Sure.
Because he does so much crowd work. He gets like a million laughs a minute.
Yeah.
But I've always done poorly following him because you don't know what to do. So this time though, I had a new idea, which is, I'm going to do an impression of him. I said to the audience, I'm going to do an impression of Aaron Berg going through Saudi Arabian customs. And
okay, how did this go? I want to hear about this. What was the bit?
Well, I basically just imitated his. I sat in the chair, which I never do, and I imitated his voice. He's got a certain pitch in his voice, and I just repeated some of his jokes that would be kind of annoying at Saudi Arabian customs.
Oh, okay.
And because he talks about like, oh, what's Jewish Vin Diesel doing up here?
Right.
So I kind of like put it in that context, and I did it poorly. But the point was that I was doing it, and the audience got it.
It didn't matter.
Yeah. So I could even stand up and say, I can't do him.
Yeah.
But then that separates finally the connection between the audience and what he was doing to them.
Yes.
So it worked.
You got to sever that. They have a relationship. That's what I always tell MCs. Like, I don't like when the MC just goes, all right, it brings you up right after the other guy. Because the audience needs time to grieve the loss of their relationship with a performer. A bond forms for like 15 minutes. They have this kind of relationship. They're interacting. They're adjusting to his energy. They get, it's like they're bonding, and then it's severed. They say goodnight. And then the audience is slightly disoriented, okay? And it's the MC's job at that moment to usher them through the grief process, whether it be 30 seconds with one joke or whatever, and readjust and recalibrate to the fact that there's an ongoing show. That wasn't the last guy. That's not the end of the show. I know he's gone. I know you've experienced a loss, okay? But we want you to hang in there. It's not over yet. There's another guy. Because like a lot of times when they attach to a guy, especially if he's killing, they don't want him to leave. Right. Don't leave me. No. And they've been abandoned. So you have to, a lot of MCs, they don't realize that you're dealing with a traumatized group of people who've lost their leader. Like the person that they most have this bond, this creative, emotional bond has formed, this connective tissue. And then you feel like a substitute teacher coming up. If you're the next comic, you feel like an invader, an interloper in this relationship that's just, oh, where's the other guy? Who are you? I'm not ready to date yet. I need to grieve the other guy. I'm not ready to have a new guy. So you have to say something about that, or the MC has to do it. A lot of times the MC won't, because they don't want to, they feel that they're not liked because they don't want to take the heat. So they'll just go, the next guy's a really funny guy, and then they'll just bolt the stage, and you'll be like, okay, now I got to be the one who takes the the pain, like the substitute, the stepfather, the step comic has to come on stage and go on stage and go, we don't like you, we want Aaron back. It's like I know I miss him too, okay, but I'm all you have, okay. The quicker we get over this, the better it's going to be for all of us. I'll give you a moment, I understand, but I'm here now, and I'm the only comic in the room left, okay. Aaron is out doing another show right now, okay, with another new fresh group of people. How does that make you feel, okay?
This is great advice because I have to MC tonight, so
yeah, exactly.
You could kind of go through the whole 5 stages of grief with the audience.
It's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, anger, denial, bargaining, and acceptance. It's like now we got to get to acceptance right now, okay,
right.
Folks. All right, you can bargain and go. Well, what if we made a pact and could Aaron come back? No, he's not coming back. You can't bargain your way out of this. Denial, he's gone. Okay, anger. Yes, I'm angry too. What is it? Anger, bargaining, denial.
There's anger, denial, anger, bargaining.
What? We're missing one.
Grief, and acceptance.
What is it?
Grief.
Death, anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance.
What? I'm missing one. Depression?
Depression, acceptance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Really?
you get sad.
Depression is one?
Yeah, you get sad. You finally.
Yeah. Finally at the acceptance stage.
I
okay?
have cancer. I'm sad.
Right, and the
I can't
sixth stage
bargain.
is James Altucher. Right? Like that's the last stage of grieving. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
They see me on stage.
Then we're at that now.
Right.
Okay. So get to that stage right now because I only got 8 more minutes left up here, and there's not enough time to go through the entire Elizabeth Kubler-Ross hierarchy chart right now. So there you go. So that's one way, and that's true. That's something that no one realizes. Like I worked with Seinfeld one time, and before he was like huge, I think I was 17 or something like that on a show with him, and somebody crushed in front of him, and I was the MC, and he goes, "Hey, do some time in the middle," and I wasn't supposed to because the owner said no, don't do any time because I was young and I wasn't that good, right? So, but he came up to me and goes, do some time in the middle, and I end up taking the bullet.
That was a good Seinfeld mumble. I heard the Seinfeld.
Yeah, what the deal with that? What's with this James Altucher guy? You know what I'm saying? Why is he on the show? Anyway, so yeah, we're doing voices again. I'm back doing impressions, right? Oh, hey, what would it be like if Jerry Seinfeld worked at McDonald's? I hate impression shit. I used to mock the shit out of that. That was so funny. Hey, what's the deal with these fries? But anyway, I don't know what we're saying. He said, go up and do a little time in the middle, which I wasn't supposed to. But he said, Mr. Seinfeld told me I had to go do time, sir. And so I went up and I did 1 minute and ate it. But with nothing, like I had crappy material, but it helped the show. But the owner was like, "What the hell are you freaking doing? I told you not to do no time." And I'm like, yeah, but Mr. Seinfeld said he wanted me to do time. I didn't know who am I supposed to answer to, like the superstar comedian, the club owner. I didn't know I'm supposed to answer to the club owner, but I didn't want to alienate, So that's the MC's job is to sometimes take the bullet for to make the show better.
Yeah.
And some don't want to do that, and I understand it. But then sometimes it puts you in a position in which you have to shoulder the burden of shepherding this traumatized, abandoned group of people through the grief process and letting go, and then acclimating them to your comedy. So
no, it's an interesting way to look at it because I used to do a lot of public speaking, and I had one time where I was literally going onto the stage right after Julian Assange.
Wow.
Julian Assange, he was in the embassy in the UK and Ecuador, but
I've never had to follow Julian Assange. I've never, very few comics can say that story.
Right. So
I got to follow, who went on ahead of me, did a guest spot? Julian Assange, okay?
He was Skyping.
Edward Snowden did a quick 10. He was warming up for Letterman. And he did, really?
So Julian Assange, he was Skyping in. They had him on a huge movie theater size screen.
Oh,
it's like
God.
1,000 people.
Wow.
And he spoke for an hour
Right.
about the dangers of society and the government's listening, and even WikiLeaks is listening.
Right.
So I'm trying. It was like a Rubik's Cube. I'm trying to figure out
how
to break the connection between the audience and him.
Yeah.
So what I did was I walked out on stage pretending to talk on my phone.
Oh, that's funny.
And I said, yeah, it was just Julian Assange. He was incredible. No, not Benedict Cumberbatch. It was the actual Julian Assange.
That's funny, yeah.
And he said that even WikiLeaks is listening to our conversations. And so then I hold up the phone, said, if everybody listening to my conversations, this is horrible. So I turned
That's
around and I
great.
smashed the phone into pieces.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they were all shocked, and then
Right.
that broke the connection.
There you go. See
So-
that? See, that's what I'm talking about. That's some of the little things that you don't realize. See, that really helps your experience as a comic because you're comfortable speaking in front of people. Most people go up cold, and that at least you had that experience of that. And you have to follow Julian Assange. How many comics can say?
Right.
You know. that's
Well,
a
I always
cool-
try to figure out how to kind of like borrow the 10,000 hours from other places where I've learned to
Sure.
communicate humorously
Yeah.
into this. So I don't,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to spend 10,000 hours on
Right,
this.
right,
I'll be an old man
Yeah.
by the time.
What's the deal with Julian Assange? I gotta follow Julian Assange. They're putting Edward Snowden in the middle spot. Anyway,
Well, Brian Scott McFadden,
Been a
I think
pleasure.
we conquered several
yes,
problems.
Yes.
And
B. Scott McFadden on Twitter.
B.
Find
Scott.
find me on Twitter. B. Scott McFadden on Twitter.
And what do you
I'm
do?
trying to build some-
YouTube stuff?
I do YouTube stuff. Yeah, I got a web show coming out, and I'll be talking about that. And that's I don't want to bring that up here or not. I'm not sure. Whatever, but
Bring it up. Just
yeah.
are
Plug
you
it.
going to do it for YouTube?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
so-
look for that.
What's it called? What's it called?
It's called Agent of Trump. Right.
All right,
Where I
well-
play Donald Trump's agent. Right. It's a lighthearted, crazy, insane show, and look for that. It's really funny.
You know what? You should so I'll close with two pieces of advice.
Yeah.
You should animate at least one of the episodes.
Okay.
Like take one of the episodes and then it's you and Trump and it's animated voice and you doing all the voices.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, and
Okay.
it's an
Yeah,
animation.
yeah. But they already have that with my friend Jeff Bergman's on My Cartoon President. The Cartoon President
Oh,
on Showtime.
right, on
So they already
Showtime.
have that. So they're already doing that. It's been covered. It kind of annoys me.
But not from the
but it's
agent's
great. The show's
perspective.
great.
Maybe it's a way to pitch into that.
Right. Yes,
So-
that's true. It's a great show, by the way.
And the other thing is, a lot of your bits, even the ones you mentioned here, are standalone. You could put just those bits up on YouTube.
True.
Like a 2-minute. That's perfect
Yes.
for YouTube. It's like a 2-minute YouTube
True.
clip.
True.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that's my two pieces
Well,
of
thank you,
advice.
James.
So thanks once again, Brian
Yeah,
Scott
B.
McFadden.
Scott McFadden on Twitter, and we'll be talking more. James, it's a pleasure. It's been a thrill to be here in this episode, and we covered a lot, didn't we?
Covered a lot.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.